Are you at your point where you think you've hit your bottom, or maybe that there's just no way you're ever going to feel like things can change? I was like that. I really was. And I want you to know, my name is Bromo, by the way. I want you to know that there is a way out. Please join us for my podcasts.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
All right, what is going on? My name is Bromo. There is a way out. My sobriety date is 2/17/09. Should I get there, and we always need to say that, man, I'm coming up on 15 years. It's the greatest day of my life on that day. I am not an expert. I don't have a certificate or anything like that. I am an alcoholic. All I really have is experience of life and doing these podcasts. I finally finished my share after about 14 of these long segments, and I've been putting people on, which I believe big time is the strength of my podcast. And today, there's a fellow that I've been trying to reach for about 6 years when I was doing my podcast when I lived in Minot. And then, of course, I had to shut down my podcast after I got basically let go from the company that I was at, but I was able to bring my podcast over here. And I've talked him into being in today, and his name is Keith. You want to go as Keith or your full name? Or are you just Keith?
It doesn't matter. Keith. Keith's fine. Keith Blankenship. It doesn't matter to me, bud.
Keith is calling me from San Diego. How's the weather out there? Is it still raining like cats and dogs out there?
We have a little break today. It's looking nice finally. Sun's out. Looking forward. A couple days of nonstop rain, but still have quality problems out here, bud.
First of all, what is your sobriety date?
2/22/07. A couple days after yours, and if I'm fortunate to make it next 2 weeks-ish, I'll have 17 years left.
God. That is something else. And your choice of drug was or alcohol was drinking?
Yeah, alcohol, and then offset it with copious amounts of accelerants. Started with just, some cocaine and then switched over to methamphetamines. But, everything starts and ends with the drink. You know?
Sure does. Where are you from?
San Diego. Grew up by the stadium up in a little part of San Diego called Serra Mesa. Kind of was in that bubble for a long time, and then went to Mission Bay High School, bust out here, and San Diego's been my home. I've tried to leave a couple times, but always end up back.
You are married, I believe, and you have a couple of kids now, or just one?
I do. I have two older sons, and I have a 2-year-old daughter with my wife, and life is good. I'm blessed. Quality problems.
We are going to talk in a couple minutes about how I came across Keith, but you want to tell everybody what you do today, now?
Yeah, I'm partners in some amazing projects, recovery-related stuff and mental health stuff here in San Diego. I've been doing basically was a defense contractor prior to changing my life, and through the course of me getting help and some guidance, basically came to the realization that that line of work wasn't conducive to me not drinking, and decided to kind of go down a path, and took some suggestions, and it's led to a long-term career in substance abuse and mental health. And as of this last December, I've been doing this line of work for 16 years.
Let's talk about the dark days. Talk about how you were drinking and doing whatever you were doing until you finally realized, man, I got to do something. Give us a little bit of details on what that was like in your head, mentally and physically and all of that.
Yeah, it's kind of started real organic, just kind of having fun in high school. I think I smoked pot first. It was the summer after 8th grade going into 9th grade. Smoked a little bit of pot, kind of got into that, and it was more of a weekend warrior, twice a month thing for a while, and kind of built steam until I was probably, junior in high school. It was a daily thing. Started partying a little bit here and there, doing that, and it was real I was too into sports, too into other stuff to really get too crazy. And it seems like once I graduated, things just kind of took off. Drinking became more and more prevalent. Drinking 3-4 days a week, and other drugs like some.
Oops, kind of losing you there. Hello, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. You kind of cut out just for a second. Keep going. You said
yes.
Go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, so some real like starter type drugs, alcohol and ecstasy, and doing that. Started dabbling a little bit of cocaine around, I think I was 18, 19. And I think really once I found cocaine mixed with alcohol is when my drinking really started taking off. When you're doing accelerants with alcohol, you don't realize the amount you're drinking and what it's doing to you, and you just kind of get trapped in that cycle, and it's a lifestyle, and it's unpredictable. It comes with the good and the bad, and I excelled, or so I thought, for a long time in that life. Did that, and alcohol really started. I think I was 20 the first time my mom called me an alcoholic. Obviously, that meant nothing at the time, and kind of accepted it with open arms and thought it was amazing, like I had arrived. And I did that. And
so, real quick, can I stop you real quick? When you were first flagged an alcoholic, if you were like me, did you go, "Oh, come on, quit overanalyzing, quit overdoing it"? Was that your thought? Because you for sure said to yourself, "I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not one of those."
I think what it was, I think there was part of me that, if I looking back, I knew I was kind of trapped, and I was along that ride for a while. But I think I justified it. I grew up. My grandma was in our household, and she was tie her down, strap her to a gurney, and ship her off to a county mental health type drinker. So I wasn't like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it looks different. Always been employable. Always had decent jobs. So it's hard to kind of latch onto those type of terms when your other examples, even though I was young at the time, getting sober back then, it wasn't the cool thing to do. So I didn't know anybody that was sober. I didn't know anybody that ever talked about being alcoholic. So it was like really kind of new to me.
Yeah.
Nobody, we called a lot of people that, but none of them got traditional help, or, I didn't know anybody in 12-step recovery. So I didn't have like the example to really kind of base what I needed. So all my examples were very extreme medical conditions, in and out for cirrhosis, people that would drink themselves basically, crazy and end up in like psych wards. So I couldn't latch onto that.
Yeah. No, I understand completely. When you're in that phase of drinking in you're in comfortable world, like you said, you were functioning with jobs and things like that, it's not a problem. Hey, I don't have a problem. I'm going to continue because it's part of my life, right?
Yeah, you make it to work every day. You handle certain responsibilities. You do that, and your free time's your free time, and work hard, play hard, and as long as the two aren't always colliding, then there's really no issue in my mind. Yeah,
I'll tell you, the thing that would always piss me off was when I would go to work and I had an alcoholic that worked there forever. She was she still is. She had many years when I worked there, and she'd pull me aside and say, "You're an alcoholic." I said, "F you. Look, I'm coming to work. I'm performing. You're the one that has to go to meetings, and you're so vocal about it." And it really angered me. I never took a look at myself until, of course, a couple of years later when it had to be looked at. But when someone saw you and maybe suggested to you, "Hey, Keith, you should back off on the booze," or maybe you think maybe you drink too much? Anyone ever pose that to you, and did it make you mad?
Yeah. Dad, I justified it as it was just a phase. I'm super young. It's what everybody my age is doing. I'll get out of it once I accomplish X, Y, and Z. But until then, I'm just having fun.
Yeah.
Especially Southern California, it's a lifestyle.
No
you gotta
kidding.
Go through it. I think you have to do certain things to even be called a San Diegan. You have to, obviously you have to make it to Tijuana by a certain age, and you have to, basically have a DUI by a certain age, or you can't really say you're a San Diegan,
No kidding. Someone's got to take you down to TJ. Yeah, someone's got to take you down to TJ for maybe a bachelorette party and have some little bambina sitting on your lap when you're totally hammered. That's when you're a San Diegan. Is that right?
There's a rite of passage in my mind. You grow up a certain way, and I think, a lot of people kind of pose that there. I also kind of grew up with a belief system. It's kind of taught to me from, certain family members and friends and other people's parents where, you can make any decision in life as long as you can afford to get out of it, and so that rang true in some like legal situations that I had seen and this and that, but it didn't come true when it came to drinking. There was no amount of money that could be thrown at that issue that I found out later,
Yeah, real quick, how old are you?
I'm 43 now. I'll be 44 in March.
Good Lord, I got shoes older than you.
Yeah, it's true. I was really fortunate. I got sober at 26 and, haven't looked back. I had enough data leading up to that with, some DTs, shaking with surgeries and things like that, I think what happened was everything was fun. My experiences is that lifestyle in my mind was extremely fun. And then I went to sleep one night and I woke up the next day and everything was trash.
God, no kidding. No kidding.
I know there was a progression. Things started falling off way before I identified that.
Yeah.
But when I noticed it, it was there. And I'd like to tell you that once I noticed that is when I got help. But to me, that's when it gets dark. When you're trapped, you're in a lifestyle that you can't break. And it's like you're holding on by a thread. And I continued like that for a long time. I switched from cocaine as, my secondary kind of love to methamphetamine. And that right there, my drinking got insane. And but I was able to identify with drugs that if I didn't stop, I was going to lose everything. So I made the decision. I stopped. I had been away from hard drugs for about a year and a half.
Right.
And the day came. I went out drinking, just a normal day, and I continued drinking. And I did the Mission Valley run. I started at, I think, OG's, had a couple beers, went to the San Diego Brewing Company.
McGregor's.
And then ended up at McGregor's. Yeah, that's why. No, I'm dead serious. So I ended up at McGregor's, and I was trying to do the right thing, so I ordered a cab home. And the cab driver, I saw it in his eyes that he had some, he was on something. So I just asked him, and the day came, and I bought a bunch of methamphetamine again, and I went basically like in a 3-day blackout. Snapped out of it, and I was at my mother's house, and it was all bad. And I was there, and I saw her. And she had given me that look like a million times prior, but sometimes when she looked, that look of disappointment, it shattered. I realized that her face and that look matched my insides.
Let me stop you real quick. Let me stop you for the whole group, for everybody that's listening. Describe that look, and when you got that look for the last time, describe how you felt.
It was just that look of... It was sadness. It wasn't that she was disappointed in me, any of that stuff, because she was way past that. It was the fact that she looked like her son's destiny was to die with the lifestyle that she had been seeing and that I had trained her to expect.
Yeah.
I had been able to piece together a couple little moments of clarity. I was still drinking, but I was presenting better and off the hard stuff and that, and so there was a little bit of hope in her, but I shattered that over and over. So I went periods of time and I'm very fortunate. My mom found, was it Al-Anon? She was either going to kill me or kill herself. I was driving her crazy. Yeah. And,
did I lose you?
I loved me.
There you go.
She loved me, but she wasn't going to love me to death. And, that day came in that look, and I'd seen it before, but this time, I realized that emptiness that I saw in her thing and that disappointment was like internally, like I finally started to feel it for myself.
Wow.
I felt it was the first time I was disappointed in me. That was the first time that I knew that I couldn't go any longer, and it was I'm not a religious man by any means, but because of this and looking back at my process, I don't believe in coincidences. I think that moment happened at the exact wrong time. I think if it would have happened 20 minutes before, I still would have been a little too incoherent. And if it happened 20 minutes after that, I probably would have been loaded again.
Wow.
So I think everything lined up. And because of that, I was able to start the process and get some help and end up learning some spiritual principles and heading in a new direction.
So let's talk about your first couple of plans. Where were you going to go on your first day sober, and what was the game plan that you had in mind?
So well, the game plan was to get help. I didn't know what it looked like. Was able to find a program for me the next day. Got dropped off. Funny little story, man. So I do not do well. I can, I've tried heroin, all that. I can do well on almost any drugs. The one thing that just kicks my butt is benzodiazepines, Xanax, all these things.
What does that do? What does that do, Keith? I've never experienced that.
To me, it's like drinking a whole bunch of alcohol. I go into blackouts. I lose like 18, 24 hours of my life if I do even one. I've only done it a couple times, but it's a funny story. So my mom drops me off at rehab the next day. Do my intake, come back. It's family night that night. They asked if, do I mind if my mom comes? I was like, no problem. She's supportive. So she comes back that night, and she starts crying when she sees me. And I'm like, what's wrong? Aren't you happy that I'm here? And they had given me benzos because I was a seizure risk. And she started crying, and she goes, you looked better when I dropped you off.
Really?
Yeah, right. Because I was so loaded from the benzos. It's a funny little story. It makes me smile. My mom and I talk about it all the time. She just
yeah. So this was rehab, correct? This is
yeah. I went to a place called now it's the McDonald Center, but back then it was Sharp Vista Pacifica.
Keith, is that still there? McDonald Center, the 28-day
It's moved from UCSD, and now it's over at Sharp over in Linda Vista.
I didn't know that. No kidding.
It took over Vista Pacifica, so that's the same spot that I went through. So now it's the McDonald's Center.
So it's a 28-day place, right? Pretty much a month.
Yeah. And for me, it was great. It was enough time for me to, what it was for me, it was get me out of my environment, and it gave me enough time to pull my head out of where
right.
to make a better decision. And it was medical model, so they didn't talk about being in recovery. The staff, they didn't do any of that. But there was one guy that seemed different there, and he said, "Hey, if you're able to take some time off of your life and you don't have to go back to work, you should reach out to this place you should go take a look at Pathfinders, and we can get you down there to tour." I just something about that clicked, and because he was the guy that I could tell maybe had been in my shoes. And, the thing with that is like every day I wanted to drink. I wanted to get loaded for basically 28, 30 days that I was there. I wanted to get loaded. But it was safe where I could have, but I didn't. I was going to keep my word. I was going to give this an honest shot, but I learned just enough to kind of buy me some time.
Mm-hmm.
And so so I decided to go to Pathfinders, and I got accepted. They used to have the private thing, so I paid more. I was only going to do 90 days because I know better than everybody,
Yep. And, I want to stop you real quick. When you were at McDonald's Center, first of all, I want to describe to everybody what it's like. It's kind of like a really fancy hotel, but it's a hospital. Was Fred there, one of the counselors?
No, that was when, because they were separate, he was at McDonald's Center.
Okay, did you take music therapy when you were in there?
They didn't have music therapy there. They did a little bit of fitness stuff. They did a little art stuff.
Okay.
Nothing crazy. It was a lot of medical model stuff, real education onto kind
right. Okay.
Neurological systems. They did therapeutic model stuff. I had a great experience overall.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be there, but I stayed. So it was, they did their job for sure. I'm still sitting here today.
So you're at Pathfinders, and you're thinking, and you said back then it was only how long?
Well, no. So they had two tracks. They had the 90-day track, the private track.
Oh, okay.
You paid more. So I signed up for that, and then they had their 9-month program. So started there. I was only going to do a certain amount of time. My first day there was great. I pull in. I was wearing a watch. I pull in my car. All this stuff, and little Joe's on the porch, and he just looks at me and he's just like, "What are you doing here? You got a car and a really nice watch. What are you doing here?" I was like, "Fuck, great." Oh, sorry for my language.
That's all right. That's all right. Don't worry about it.
Great start already, and do my intake. And I think the coolest thing that's ever happened to me was there. I still kind of struggled a little bit with, am I as bad and do I belong?
Yeah.
Because there's always worst cases. So I go upstairs, and house one. You go upstairs, you finally see your roommate. I think I was in room 2, the 3-man room, when you walk up the stairs on the left.
Yeah.
And I meet my first roommate, and he was this homeless veteran that you literally scraped him out of the gutter.
Yeah.
Like the definition of everything you've seen on TV, everything you've heard about, you think about it, he was indigent, just a wreck, just a mess. And so I'm sitting there like, what am I doing here? this isn't me. This is not my life. I'm employable. I have places to go. You know what I mean? I still had some things, and it was really hard for me to like do that. And about 25, 30 minutes later, my other roommate showed up, and he was a San Diego State English professor on his like 7th or 8th DUI.
Oh, wow. Isn't that something?
And I sat there and I talked to both those gentlemen, and I realized, yeah, I wasn't as bad as him, but my life doesn't look as good as this guy's. I'm somewhere in the middle. Maybe I belong here. Maybe I belong here. You know what I mean? And
while you're settling, hey Keith, while you're settling in, you're there. If you're like me, did you find yourself just despondent and like completely out of interest with the meetings, and you pretended like you were listening, but you really, really, absolutely didn't want to be there, and the meetings bored the hell out of you?
Well, I think, I know your story, not just from listening to it, because I know your story very, very well. From getting in and doing all that. So
yeah,
you had a much different transition. I actually had to, once I got out of my center, I had about a 4 to 6 week wait to get into Pathfinder. So I had to white knuckle and do that. I did a little outpatient at the other program. I was drug testing like 3 days a week just to make sure I can get there. But I was going to the 1 o'clock meeting 5 days a week.
Okay.
I met the residents. I did that. I had a good process. So I had already I had started the steps. The day I got out of treatment, the next day, the staff member that worked at the other center told me that Pathfinders had a Sunday men's meeting that I should check out since I got my car back and I could do it. So I went to Sunday men's and I met my sponsor there on day one. I didn't know what it looked like. I just did that and ended up working with him. And when I talk about that, I think the big thing about this is the obsession to drink. I can tell you to this moment the day it was removed from me. I met this gentleman, gave me a big book, told me to start kind of doing this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And on our first day, we sat underneath the flagpole on the corner of Pathfinders. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And we didn't talk about like drinking or not drinking. He just asked me to tell me his story, tell him my story. He told me his. And then at the very end of it, when I talked about like that darkness inside of the hole that I had in my soul, he didn't look at me and said, hey, if you do certain things, you won't drink again. He didn't talk about it. What he did was he said, if you follow me and do what's outlined in this book, you never have to feel like that again.
Wow.
And that's when that was the first person that everybody had told me I couldn't drink again, I couldn't do drugs, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I didn't care about any of that. He was the first person that told me that if I did certain things, I didn't have to feel the way I felt.
Oh.
And I was sold. I was willing to go down some rabbit path that I had no clue what was on the other side, just to potentially have the chance to not feel the way I felt when I got there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. So
you stayed there for how long?
So I was only supposed to do 90 days, and then I started taking the steps, and I think I got to the amends, and I made amends to my mom, the Al-Anon lady who was probably ready for this day. And I made amends to her, and I said, what can I do to make everything in the past right? And she came back with, I want you to finish all 9 months at Pathfinder.
Yeah. Oh, cool. How did that make you feel? Where you go, okay, sure.
I was furious. I don't think I talked to her for like a couple of weeks, but I stayed. I stayed, and during that course of things, like a lot of things like happened. I had it was an alumni that worked in this field, and he asked me to come with him on a mental health intervention just to like be back up in case some violent acts happened for this guy because of his history. So I got to watch him in work. And then, I was able to realize that my line of work, living out of hotel rooms for long periods of time, wasn't like safe for me. And, I think if I would have sold myself short at Pathfinders, like obviously where I'm at today would look much different if I was able to maintain the sobriety that I have. So,
yeah.
I remember supposed to discharge in January, and I have almost a year sober, and they asked me to help, at nighttime to make sure nobody burned down the place, and just through a real organic process, ended up going back to school, and one day kind of, taking over the front office and working there for years,
All right. Well, now we're going to put a pause because here's where I come into play, and here's why I couldn't wait to get this man on. because this guy played a huge role in my life. I'm still sober because of him. I'm not trying to make this all gushy and everything, Keith, but I first of all, do you remember the last time I saw you? I just want to throw that out so I don't forget. I saw you at La Mesa at a La Mesa men's meeting, and I was about ready to move to Fargo, and I was telling you this new job offer I had to work at a country bebop station, and I was going to do this and that, and you were so helpful, and you're like, man, that sounds cool. What an opportunity, because back then, 10 years ago, I was working as a bill collector, which was no offense to bill collectors, one of the worst jobs on the planet, but I had no direction in radio at all. And I talked to you, and I said, I'm scared. And you said, look, first thing you do out there, of course, is find a meeting, and I did. But I'm going to now tell everybody how I came across Keith. This is awesome. When I went to Freedom Ranch, I spent 120-something days there, and I remember these three guys from Pathfinders that came out and talked and told everybody about a direction in your life that you should take when you get out of Freedom Ranch, because you need another place to go. And they talked about it, and I have no place to go, and this sounds pretty good. And then I put my name on a list, and I went down and I met Keith. And then I got in. I think I waited, I don't know how many days I waited, and I got that call, and I drove my rickety car from Freedom Ranch to Pathfinders, and I went in and I met with Keith. And even then, I was not happy, not hip at all with life. And I thought that cameras were following me, and I thought I was Mr. Big Shot, and I could care less if anybody went up and spoke on the podium. Get me out of here. Let me do these required meetings that Keith talked about, the 1 o'clock, the Sundays. God, I hate this. Everybody seems happy and drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, but I want none of this crap because I don't belong here. Still to this day, I thought to myself I didn't belong here. And as I progressed at Pathfinders, I remember to this absolutely day, it was a Saturday, and it was gloomy out, and I can't tell you how long sobriety I had. I had almost a year, because I got there kind of late, remember, Keith? And when I got there, and Keith is the one that brought me over. Keith is the one that interviewed me. And I remember what you had just said a couple minutes ago. I remember to a T. I went into your office, and I was blabbing about some girl that was giving me a heartache.
I remember. Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No, go ahead. I was whining away.
She had you a little spun up.
She had me wrapped around her finger. I mean, in about a million ways. And I was devastated. And I talked, and I almost cried. And Keith is just leaning back. And he's got a look on his face with a smile like he's going to give me a gift. And I remember thinking, what the hell is this guy smiling at, man? My whole world is destroyed by this girl. And I spoke about 45 minutes. And he leans up and he says, well, congratulations. And I said, what are you talking about? He goes, quote, it appears to me that the obsession has been lifted. You remember saying that?
Yeah, I do.
And I'll never forget. I said, what? You go, to this whole conversation, this whole sappy, long, drawn-out conversation, you haven't, those weren't your words, but you haven't mentioned drinking at all. And for the first time, when I walked across the street to go back to house number 2 to use that George Foreman grill to cook up a steak, I remember thinking, I am an alcoholic, and this is my life, and I do have some sort of direction. I haven't thought about drinking. Do you know that was the gift you gave me? That's
awesome, man. And you know, I'd love to pretend to be God and do that, but that gift was given to you by something that's out there, and the work that you did, even though you think you weren't doing enough.
I wasn't
just enough.
I wasn't doing any work.
But willingness does go in there. Obviously, you need to take further action and get involved in the program. But you had done enough stuff to give yourself a little bit of time mentally from the obsession.
So let me ask you this: I have loved being in radio for a long, long time, and I was telling everybody in my podcast before, the greatest thrill is in somebody telling me, "Hey, Bromo, I heard you on that bit last week. You made me laugh. You made my mother laugh." And that used to be the greatest compliment. Now is when someone tells me, quote, Bromo, I heard you speak at the Freedom Ranch. I was in the second row. I'm still sober. And I heard what you said. Here's the thing, Keith. How many millions of times have you heard that from young men that have come in that you interviewed, that you watched in the same chair like me? How many guys have come up to you recently or whenever have told you, Keith, You helped save my life.
I'm extremely fortunate that here in San Diego, I've been doing this type of stuff for a long time, and I've been able to plant enough seeds. And I do get it quite often. And I think on the one side it's very rewarding, but on the back side of it, it's a very hard job. You see a lot of failures, a lot of triumphs, a lot of tragedy. Now with that, I overdose. I didn't overdose, but I see more overdoses and deaths in a year than weddings I'll ever go to in my life. So it's a lot of heartache and pain too. But I think for me, the reward comes years later, man. There's guys from either Pathfinders or other facilities I worked where they didn't get it when they were with me, but I was always honest to them. I try to speak the truth about the condition, the nature of their condition, and then I'll see them like 7, 8, 9 years later, like at a grocery store.
Yeah.
And they'll come up to me and they're like, "Hey, Keith, I just wasn't ready then, but when I was ready, all the things you were trying to tell me came back, and I appreciate it. I appreciate everything you were trying to do." And then they'll tell me their story. They're like, "Hey, I've been sober for 4 years. I got my kids back. I'm in a union or an accountant, whatever it looks like. And, I just, all those things you were trying to do, like I'm thankful for. And when I was ready, that information was there and I was able to use it." I think it's just, and you just don't know when it's coming. And it usually comes to me when I need it the most.
Wow. That's incredible.
Kind of a God shot, I get wrapped up into my own problems and thinking about Keith all the time and all this other stuff. And, something like that will happen or on those lines. It kind of just, it's kind of bring it home that, this is it's bigger than just me,
Well, let me bring back one other memory, and this is one that changed my life 1,000,000%. This is when I was still wondering where was my life going and wondering, why I'm here. Woe is me. I felt sorry for myself. And you remember this, and it was a moment that I'll never forget. And I'm not trying to make this dramatic, but that's what it was. We were all at our morning meditation, kind of. There must have been 30 of us. Keith, what do you think? 30 of us for all the guys that were in the houses.
I want to say Pathfinders at the time had 42 men.
I think you're right. And we were all in a circle. This is gloomy early in the morning. I believe it was after breakfast. We're given inspirational books or whatever, and we're all going around the room, kind of just giving everybody.
Are you about to talk about Rob?
I sure am.
Go ahead. No, it's a good one.
No, I want you to tell us what happened. So all we knew was this guy that I had gone through the whole house 1, house 2, house 3 with, and he and I would sit out and smoke cigars. I would smoke cigars, and he and I would talk about what life was going to be afterwards. And we still didn't know, but he had a son. But go ahead, tell us about what happened that day. I'll never forget it.
Yeah, it's just the tragedy and kind of stuff too. I remember just going on a path and gentleman, relapsed and got to a spot where I think just with the failure and that and the darkness that the alcoholic who struggles kind of goes through, maybe the ultimate sacrifice. And that hit home to a lot of you guys. I remember you guys, was it you and him used to just like smoke cigars or whatever, you smoke a cigarette or something.
Yeah.
You guys spent a lot of time together. And, it hit home for me is he was part of my kind of sponsorship group. He was attached in through my group of guys and all that stuff. So, it hit us home too that, it's jails, institutions, and death, and it's the grave nature of our condition, it really kind of, there's some things that I hate they used to say, but it makes true. It's the sad part of it is that some of us will die so the rest can live.
True.
But I also know that there's the help out there for everybody that nobody else has to die. You know what I mean? But it does take the ability to be honest and to be willing to practice a new way of life. And there's multiple forms. No way do I want to say that 12-step recovery is the only way. I know people that have changed their lives in other forms that have a quality of life they've never known. But there's a couple core components that you have to do. You have to do to maintain that.
Yeah.
And the big one that happens, I think it's, people ask for help. People do the soul searching needed. They come up with a game plan. But it's that maintenance. being of service to other people, doing things without, ulterior motives, learning like we fail. I've made more bad decisions and mistakes sober than I did when I was loaded. And I have a process now where I don't want to continue to treat people that way. I don't want to continue to make those same decisions. So I have to do like things on a daily basis and reflect on days and kind of look at that, and, people I think too that don't get into that kind of thing. And they when life gets good, they basically kind of, thank us for all the information that we've given them over the years, but they got it from here. And a lot of those people go down dark paths.
Yeah, the insanity, the disease had taken Rob's life. He took his life, and with that, when Keith came in with that announcement, I mean, it was quiet, and we looked at each other, and a lot of us were like, couldn't believe it, and I was mortified, and I said to myself real fast, dude, if you don't get busy, and this is real, there's like once again, there's no cameras behind me, there's no blonde waiting to pull up with a suitcase of money and cigars and say, hey, here's your reward. I knew if I knew that if I got out of Pathfinder soon and I wasn't doing anything, and this is the weird thing, when you made that announcement, within seconds, I knew I could have been heading that way. Any one of us could have been.
Yeah, and I think the thing is too is especially for people that, if you fail before, a lot of people get in that rut like, hey, I failed before, I know I'm going to fail again, so why not just get it started now? And it's a bunch of BS. If you come in willingly and honest, like you have the same chance as the first time you ever showed up.
I agree.
And you don't know unless you put in the work. And for alcoholics, it's a little bit different. It is what it does to our body takes more time and does this. But just to talk about like recovery in general with this, and I think I bring it up just because it's the line of work and I deal with it. But I carry Narcan in all my backpacks. I put it in my wife's car, my car. I give it to the stores around where I live.
Nice.
I remember when I was getting sober, and probably the same time as you hear about these people overdosing from heroin, but almost all of them were trying to kill themselves. They were doing a hot shot. They had relapsed, or their girls left them, and they were making the ultimate sacrifice. Most of them. But now with this new stuff that's out, people, like very few people are trying to, but they're playing Russian roulette. Some street chemist is out there rolling the dice doing this, and we're losing people at just astronomical rates. And, that's why I kind of pledge the fight and look at it and say that, it's that, nobody else has to die. There's so much help out there. And, whether you reach out to me or you or anybody, there's literally millions and millions of people that have changed their lives that are there. And we give up our time freely to help somebody because we've been in your shoes,
Yeah. Look at Jelly Roll. Look at what he's been doing with his path from North. He came here in North Dakota not long ago. Then he went to Washington D.C. He's talking about fentanyl and all that stuff. And to me, he's got my utmost respect. Hey, you said you mentioned earlier. Do you actually remember when I was in the house and you saw me when I first came in? Was I beat up? What was I like? I can't even remember. I mean, I can remember certain things.
You were a little frail. You'd come off of a pretty good one. You would, and the crazy thing is that was you had been at the ranch for 120, 130 days or something, right? Yeah,
I sure had.
And that means you were getting better when I saw you, and I still was like, what the hell?
Oh, I remember you finally let me know that I could come over.
What was that? Was that like a Samurai or a Sidekick you used to drive?
Yes, it was a beat-up piece of you-know-what. And
I loved that thing, man. I was jealous of that car. I loved that thing.
It was a Honda Accord, I think, that I bought. You know what is funny, Keith? It was a Honda Accord that I bought off a guy because they were about ready to repo my old car. And this was years ago, and they let me take that car out to the ranch, and I was able to bring it over to your place. And some of the people that lived in the house had cars, because the Pathfinders now, they let you go during the day, man. They say, hey, go out, when you get to the third house, you can work, I believe, right, Keith? That's what it was back then?
Yeah, it was a natural progression, and it was great. The first house, you needed to focus on the basic fundamentals of, getting sober and doing that. And then house 2, you were able to start experience a little bit more of life. So you can, they believed that it was healthy for you to make good and bad decisions and have a safe platform to come back and figure out how to continue the good things and change the bad things.
Yeah.
And then in phase 3, you know, your next step was like a real kind of push for like self-sufficiency because you're back in the real world. And, you know, you look at it too. I mean, drug Medi-Cal's changed a lot here in California, so it's not the programs it used to be. But back then, statistically speaking, I don't have the data, but I would put it up, man, that people that went through did the 90 to 120 at the ranch, and they did 9 months at Pathfinders, probably had the highest outcome rate in California. If you look at the success between the two, you know, just the containment up there in 90 to 120 days of just think about you and find out the truth about yourself, and then coming down to Pathfinders for an extended period of time and like learn how to, you know, put practical application in. And get there. I know more guys that did that combo that are still sober today than probably any other process that I've ever been across.
Well, not to be a bummer, but this is where I want you to tell everybody really the reality. Even back then, when you see 45 guys, and I told you in one of my podcasts before, my old teacher at Freedom Ranch would say, "Look around the room, guys. Look around the room, guys. You look around the room. Out of 40 of you." The odds are, and the facts are, out of 40 of you, about 3 of you will be sober maybe in a year. Most of you, some of you will be in jail or death or on the streets. Do you believe in that?
Well, looking back, I mean, at the year mark, there was way more than that, just my experience.
Yeah.
But as you got into like 5 and 10, you know, you got to think from when I was in the houses, not working there, but when I was a resident in the houses, probably came across 70 different guys, 80 different guys that came through during that time that I was a resident, those 9 months. Probably saw 80 different faces. And right now, I can name 3 or 4.
Isn't that something?
That are still tracking the trek with me, you know?
Isn't that something?
Yeah, and you know, it doesn't mean, you know, some of them, doesn't mean they don't have quality of life. They just didn't go down the track we are, and some of them got back on track. I think the good thing too is the best thing about Pathfinders and the Freedom Ranch, man, is even if you're going to drink, they really mess up that next drink. You know, you might. What did they say? There's nothing worse than a belly full of booze and a head full of AA, and they accomplished that there.
Right.
That you know. What did I used to tell you guys? I can't promise you that I'll get you sober, but I guarantee you I'll mess up your first drink.
I got to tell you, there's so many things that Keith would tell us would piss me off. And Tim the cook, when he was in charge of our house meeting, we'd have a house meeting once a week, and he came over to house 2, and we'd sit around and listen. House 3. Now that I'm thinking about it, house 3, and he would tell us, "Look, I know I'm going to drink someday, but for today, I'll be quiet. Look with that. I'm so sick and tired of hearing you say that. Look, if you're so positive with that attitude, Tim, go down the street and drink at that bar that gives you a token for anybody who breaks their sobriety, and who gives you a free pitcher of beer if you bring a token in." And he would tell me, he'd just smile, and I realized later, the guy's absolutely right.
Sparky's. Old Sparky's.
Oh, boy, yeah. This is a bar. Keith will tell you, if you bring a token in of any kind, they'll give you a free pitcher of beer. They still do that, maybe?
It's been something else for a long time.
Oh, has it?
I don't think that's a practice anymore.
Good.
You know, but Pathfinders has been such a staple and such a big part of that community that everybody's advocates for them. You know?
But you believe what Tim was telling me was absolutely right, and it took me years until I figured out he was right, because he would grin when I get all mad. He'd say, "Hey, look, I'm going to drink someday. But for today," because it's so much pressure thinking about never drinking again in your life, but for today, I'm pretty sure.
Tim was a wealth of knowledge, man, and as a resident, I didn't understand it as much. But when I started working there, and Tim and I did that, I started to value that man's word.
Me too.
More than anybody would know. I think
really?
Gems, he was just putting little gems. He wasn't there to be our father. He wasn't there to be our sponsor. He was there to just kind of put a couple little nuggets in us at a time that one day they would click and he'd understand, you know. And looking back, he did so many of those, and the men he was able to help and affect while he was there was just amazing. Such a staple.
Well, listen, I know you got to get going pretty soon, but I'm going to wrap it up. I just want you to say a couple things for one thing. Tell everybody again real quick what you do for a living.
I work in substance abuse and mental health treatment.
So awesome. What is your favorite part of your job? Go ahead. Keep going.
just wanted to put it out there, for people that, that change their lives and want to get into this line of work. The thing that's of utmost importance is to know that just because I work in this field and do that, this has nothing to do with my personal journey. It is how I keep my lights on. There's some amazing things that I get to see. I get to help a lot of people, but how I stay healthy is what I do outside of here.
Oh, absolutely. You have your own program and your own journey. Sure.
I've watched more people come in here and do this line of work, and next thing you know, they think it's a suitable substitute for their own program.
Yeah.
And the day comes,
Absolutely.
So, if you're going to I'm not telling you not to do this line of work, but make sure that what you're doing outside of here supports you staying in here.
Hey, you're battle ready, right? I mean, with your own program. I mean, so I was asking, what is your favorite part of your job?
I think the dynamics of the team. You kind of create a system in place where the whole goal is to help people that aren't able to make the decisions to do it for themselves, and we kind of guide them in the process to get them back and reintegrate back into society when they've lost, whether it's finances, jobs, personal relationships, health, and really kind of get them to a spot where they can get back on track and live a meaningful and fulfilling life.
All right, lastly, pretend like I'm brand new in front of you and I just got off the streets and I'm raw and I'm a Bromo from 15 years ago or a Dave Brandon from 15 years ago. What is it that you tell people, you can tell my audience this, about getting sober and what the rewards are, and what would you say to them right now?
Just first off, first of all, I've been in your shoes. I know the despair, I know the trials, I know the pain, I know the suffering. I have good and bad news, but there's a lot of hope. The bad news is that it's a lifelong process, but in return, if you're willing to do that process, I went from being addicted to drugs and alcohol and a lifestyle, and today I'm addicted to stability. I enjoy not looking at those loved ones and telling them I failed. I love being accountable and being here for my work. I love knowing the fact that I got sober before I had kids, and my kids never have to see me that way. And if you, want a chance at that, there's millions of people that are willing to give you their time freely to show you the process that we took to get that help.
Wow. That's pretty heavy. And I have to tell you, on a personal note, first of all, thanks for taking the time out of your day because you're at work. Second of all, thank you for being who you are, because you may poo-pah this when you hear it, whatever that means, but you are one of the main reasons why I became sober and changed my life around, because I wasn't going anywhere. And
I appreciate that, man. And of
course,
I just super proud of you, man. It's I know I don't talk to you a lot, but talk about you often, and just kind of where you were and where you're at, and just you really got to think about it as in the fact that most people that lived the life you lived prior to getting into this don't have the outcomes you have because they're past reservations and thinking that that kind of that fall, but you were able to kind of do it real systematically. And this is about being happy, and I can just go on forever about the progress you made, man. I'm super proud of you.
I appreciate that. And I can
San
tell you forever.
I'll tell you that.
Oh, you're kind. And I can tell you forever the memories that flash by when I think of you and Pathfinders. I think of you and Sundays watching Baltimore as you rooted on Joe Flacco. I remember you walking across the street with that big, huge keychain, spinning it around. I remember you telling me that you were coming up on how many years you were sober. I remember watching you go over to House 2 where you lived for a while. I remember you telling me, quote, "Congratulations. It appears to me the obsession has been lifted on you, and that is the greatest gift I've ever been given." And I tell that to everyone that I talk to. So thank you, Keith.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, no problem at all. I love you to death. Thanks for having me on. I'm glad the stars aligned and we were able to make it happen. And you're doing amazing things on this podcast. And
you're awesome.
Look forward to listening to all of them. Thank you so much, buddy.
Yeah, hang on real quick. Don't go anywhere. And that's it. That's another amazing person that I have on. And I've wanted to get him on forever. Again, if you feel like your life is maybe becoming unmanageable, someone else that you know, maybe a neighbor or loved one, I'm telling you that you can do this with help. Turn your life around. Listen to all these podcasts. Because remember, there is a way out.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.